Good getting Stuart, I've been out of the trash. Yeah. That worked well. I almost bursted the song.
You liked it?
I almost bursted the song.
Did you?
Came out of the basket. That story just told. I almost did. I was fine.
I
Got you.
I was not annoyed.
Hey, tell the people out in the Shots gathering space to come on in and join us for parables. Are you going to join us for parables? Oh, I thought that was on Thursday night. We did have a guest picked for us this day, and who was actually very excited to have a conversation with Pastor Emmy. That was Virginia Crane. We will have to reschedule her. She's just as excited to do it some other time.
Actually, Rick is going to be her interviewer. Not me. They've had conversations.
Right,
They've
right,
mapped out a plan. It's
right.
going to be really, really good.
She has COVID, along with Chuck White,
Yeah.
and along with Sky and Margot's dog groomer.
Oh, okay. All right. Jason, could you invite our friends to come in if they want to, that Parables is starting? Sky and Margot's dog groomer is his dog's groomer. Also has COVID. So we pray for healing. What is the dog groomer's name?
Her name is Kayla.
Kayla. We pray for Kayla. Sky and Margot. Yes, Stuart and Sarah and Seth have a new dog, Margot.
You know, Margot.
And she is feisty. But she's not sneaky like Sky. Sky is crafty.
So Margot is American Staffordshire, and she's about 35 pounds, she's, kind of that big, medium-sized dog, and she's stout. And she has a personality to go along with her stoutness.
Lots of energy.
She's 2.
35 pounds. That's what Olivia weighs. She's never getting out of that car seat, y'all. She's going to be riding in that car seat till she's 7. Okay, we do have a plan. Yes, we do. We do have a plan. I want to go on record as saying that sigh that I gave at the end of the service, if you were here, had nothing to do with Stuart. Okay? Somebody said, I loved that audible Stuart sigh. I'm like, no, I wasn't sighing about Stuart. So just know that. I was not annoyed. I was not annoyed.
So it's beginning to look a lot like Christmas.
It is indeed, yes.
And so inquiring minds want to know.
Yeah.
Because you have 3. Are you done?
Shopping?
Yeah. Are you
Yes.
finished? It's all.
We're done shopping. We're not done wrapping.
Have you even started wrapping?
Yeah.
Yeah. 1.
We have probably 5 or 6 presents under the tree.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So I know he's not everybody's favorite, but there are some things that we learned from Dave Ramsey that are good. And we subscribed years ago, I think before we even had kids, to the something you want, something you need, something to wear, something to read. So that's what we do for gifts. Something you want, something you need, something to wear, something to read. So we kind of think about that all year long so that we're not scrambling.
So I spent some time, maybe too much time, on Instagram, and at this time of year, Instagram puts up a lot of in Finland they do this at Christmas, or in England, they do, or they used to do this, or in France, they share all these ideas of Christmas traditions. So in Iceland, the tradition on Christmas Eve is to give a book.
Oh, yeah.
And everybody goes to their respective space and starts reading the book on Christmas Eve. There's no party. There's no.
I like that. I could get behind that. I could do that.
So,
Yeah. Well, we wanted to share stories of Christmas. I have one that I want to tell, but first I want to hear from you. Most memorable Christmas ever.
I kind of had to scan the room here. I don't know. this memory came back to me about 10 years ago, so here in the sanctuary, and man, when it hit me hard that I remembered it. So my dad knew everybody in El Paso. And come to find out, when I was 5, I had just turned 5 in October, my dad knew Santa Claus. So we went to Bassett Shopping Center, and this was back in the day when Bassett was the center of town in El Paso and was an outdoor center, like it was 2 lanes, like one on one side, stores on one side and stores on the other side, and then at the end was Popular Dry Goods at one end that kind of blocked you off there, and then at the other end was another department store called the White House. So the Popular was like your everyday man kind of department store, and the White House was the upscale department store. And then in Toys by Roy was like Toys by Roy was the most phenomenal toy store ever. That in El Paso, at least. I'm sure that there were other toy stores and still are maybe some toy stores that are just as magnificent, but you always wanted to go as a kid to Bassett because you could go to Toys R Us. But they had a community room that was used for different stuff. And, so you come in from the outside into this community room, and in the center of it, I remember it being like the biggest train set ever. But not just a one that, of course it did go in a loop, but it had the town in the center and everything. And then you lined up around it and, would make your way in a square around this big, huge thing. And then at the end was Santa on his throne and elves, helping with pictures and stuff like that. So made my way through and took a picture. My dad was there, and I think we took maybe a family picture or whatever. I remember my brother Steve, my sister Nancy, and I going and so anyways, my dad's talking to Santa, and Santa gets up and leaves. And I remember being in a back room, and I guess there was I don't know if there was another Santa that took Santa's place. But anyways, we were in my grandmother's Ford Falcon. Do you remember? Yeah, a white Ford Falcon with a blue interior. And Santa was in the front seat, and I was in the back. And it was a beautiful day. It was a beautiful, beautiful day in El Paso. One of those December days that was 70, 75. And we had the windows down. And first we went to my dad's store. There was an apartment building behind my dad's store, and we went to all of those apartments with Santa. And so I had a childhood friend who lived in those apartments, him and his brother, Alfredo Olivas Jr., so we called him Junior, and his brother Waldo. And at my dad's funeral 5 years ago, Junior was there, and Junior calls me every year because my dad passed away on Junior's birthday. And so Junior calls me every year, and we talk, and Junior was talking to my brothers and I, and telling us the first time I experienced fast food was with the Davenports, and then he was the first time I ever saw Santa Claus, I was with the Davenports, and Junior's a year or two older than I am, so he was 6, 7 years old the first time that he meets Santa Claus, and Santa Claus comes to his house, his little apartment. And so then after that, Santa Claus loads himself up in our Ford Falcon, and we go to our house. And my dad drives around the neighborhood, and I am yelling, sticking my head out the back window of the Ford Falcon, yelling to all the kids to come to our house. And so we have the house that I grew up in had a walk-in basement. So you walk in from the backyard into the basement, and because the house was built on a hill, so the front door, you walked up a couple of sets of steps and you get to the front door, but underneath all that would be the backyard and whatever. And so there was Santa sitting in a chair, and all the lights were on in our basement, and which was lit by neon signs, beer neon signs. And so all these kids, like just a big, huge line of kids, had showed up, and it was not a Sunset Heights at that point in time was not a wealthy neighborhood. It was a poor neighborhood. It was a lot of big houses that had been turned into apartment complexes, and so there was a lot of kids who probably for the first time got to meet Santa Claus because their parents couldn't afford to go to Bassett Center to even just to walk around. That was too much.
That's a great story. Santa Claus in your house. Yeah. We're drinking beer.
Probably.
And there is something really magical. I love raising the kids in the church, and our kids, they understand. Obviously, Olivia is super attached to the baby Jesus. They get that Christmas is about more than Santa, but Santa is fun. And it's fun to make those core memories. So a couple of years ago, my first Christmas with you all, my first Christmas Eve, we had arranged, Jason and I, with Santa Claus. Santa has deals for pastors' kids. He'll come early, he'll come late, he'll show up at different houses because pastors' kids might not get to celebrate on Christmas Day for whatever reason. And so we planned for that. So we arranged with Santa to come to our house on the 23rd. And we opened Christmas presents on the 24th so we could have Christmas Eve with all of you. And then we planned to go to Abilene the next day, on Christmas Day. We're going to travel on Christmas Day. We'd done it before. The kids were still small. It worked out okay. So I'm here in between services. We've done one service. The next service is coming up, and I get a call from my mom. I've been exposed to COVID. I know. So we've already opened all of our Christmas presents. We don't have a single plan for Christmas Day. I get home around 9:30 that night, and Natalie has a fever. So and my mom turned out to not have COVID, thankfully, but at that time. But Natalie was sick, and we couldn't travel. She had a high fever. It turned out not to be COVID either, but she got pretty sick, so we couldn't travel, and we had zero plans. We'd already opened all of our Christmas presents. We didn't have any food in the house because we were about to be gone for a week and a half. And Patty Kiley calls me and says, I have a feast. Can we bring it to you? She loaded it all up, everything we could want for a beautiful Christmas dinner. And we played games on Christmas Day. We played with our new presents. We had a wonderful meal. And it was a great Christmas. It was not what we had planned, but it was a good Christmas. And I was nervous about it because we were still getting to know all of you. We didn't know very many people. A lot of you were traveling. I had no idea what we were going to do. And Patty showed up. Thank you, Patty. It was a good Christmas. You didn't get a delivery that day? Steve Georgie feels left out. So I know that they have Christmas stories too.
Well, just a real quick one.
Yeah.
It's probably, gosh, it's amazing now that you've been here 3 Christmases.
Yeah.
Well, 5 years ago, because Seth was 5. We were the family that was picked to light the Advent candles on Christmas Eve at one service. And so Seth gets up here and he's in a little suit, and Sarah's in a beautiful Christmas Eve dress, and I'm wearing whatever and a bow tie. And Seth lights all the candles, and like the closest one to him, he blows it out. And nobody could hear what he said, but he says, "Happy birthday, Jesus."
That's precious. Gosh, I love it when kids are involved in the service. So any of you want to share a Christmas story? I know you've got them. Fran, why don't you come up here so our friends online, you can just stand right here. You don't have to come up the stairs. So our friends online can hear.
Actually, I have a couple. Most of you probably remember our own Mr. and Mrs. Santa. Larry and Teresa, and that was at that time we had Travis here, and I guess Jackson was only about 6 when they moved here, when they became pastors here. And so Jackson spread it out all over at school. He says, Santa and Mrs. Claus actually go to my church. And they believed, for a long time. Tracy was telling me that they believed Santa. Actually, that they were Santa because they looked so authentic. Another story, and I think I've told this story before, but this was way back, a long time ago, when I was still a kid, and I had a younger cousin. She was 4 years younger than me, so she must have been about 6, so I would have been 10 or more. Anyway, they lived in Gallup. We lived in Clovis, and their whole family loaded up all their presents and came to Clovis to have Christmas with us. So our both of our families, and so Gail was the youngest of us cousins, and she was after she got there, she got really worried, and she was really concerned, and she was just about freaking out because she just realized that they were not going to be home when Santa comes around and delivers the presents. And so she was afraid that Santa would leave her presents there, and she would not get to open up her gifts until they went home after Christmas was over. And she was just freaking out and just having a really hard time. And we finally decided, well, we'll call. Santa knows. We kept saying, Santa knows you're here, and so and so. But she would not hear it. And we finally decided, we'll just call Santa at the North Pole and remind him that to bring your presents to this place, to our place here. And so that's what we did. Back in those days, we had, party lines. Remember that?
Yep.
And our neighbors, we let it know for our neighbors that we would be calling them on the party line. So it would seem like, we can. We had one telephone in the hallway, and anyway, so we called and talked a little bit. She wanted to say, oh, let me talk to Santa. No, anyway, it all worked out, but I thought that was so funny, but yeah.
So as Fran passes the microphone to Elaine.
Yeah, my other time was my nephew was all excited. We couldn't get him to go to sleep at it was Christmas Eve. We were trying to get him to go to sleep. He was staying there. And so what we decided to do, we put him in the bed in the back, in the front of the house, the bedroom that was in the front of the house, and trying to get him to go to sleep. He wouldn't go to sleep. So we finally snuck around and took the jingle bells, and we were going to say, Santa won't come if you're not asleep. And so we got the jingle bells and rang the jingle bells underneath the window and where he was going to sleep. And he went to sleep right after that.
You didn't want to miss the inside. Thank you, Fran.
How cute. My story is one of real love, Christian Christmas love. And I don't know what year it was, but I was working in El Paso at Asbury Methodist Church. And we had our Christmas Eve, and then the next day we opened gifts. Oh, wait, let me back up. It snowed like 12 inches that day. Does anybody remember in El Paso when it snowed like 12 inches?
On Christmas Day?
On Christmas Day.
Yeah, I remember that.
Oh, yeah. I mean, that was really something. But, Early 80s. So we were supposed to jump in the car on the 26th and drive to Dallas for my family's Christmas. And so the next morning we waited and we waited. It was a beautiful sunshiny day. And so then we decided that it was all melting off. And so we got in the car and we started driving, and we got to one of those little towns, huh? Well, it was just right before Sweetwater. Roscoe, and it was getting completely dark, and there was black ice on the road, and we were so scared. And we had the radio on, and it says they're shutting down I-20, I-10? I-20. And we're sorry to tell you that there are no hotel rooms available. And so my husband and I said, what are we going to do? And I said, well, as soon as we get it, just go real slow. And as soon as we get into Sweetwater, we'll pull off and go to the Methodist church. And the Methodist church took all of us in that night. They called the Red Cross and had cots come in. We were all, there was like 300 people there. They had food brought in, and it was just really a gift of love. And we will never forget that.
Sweetwater. My Aunt Jenny and Uncle Vernon lived in Sweetwater. They lived across the parking lot behind the First Baptist Church. And across the street from the First Baptist Church was the Greyhound bus station. And so Aunt Jenny had these beautiful flowers that she would go out and spend a lot of time working on the flowers. And I asked her one day, I was like, man, it's hot. You spend a lot of time on these flowers. And she was like, because I find money in my flower beds. Because as people got off the bus, the wind would take the money that fell off out of their pockets off the bus and blow into her yard. She found thousands of dollars over the years, like thousands. It was just amazing.
That's a great story too. So I think we have time for one more. We can do one more. Does anybody else have a story to share?
Of course.
Steve Georgie.
I was born and raised in Los Angeles. My dad managed a paint and hardware store, which included housewares and other stuff. Naturally, he had to work around the Christmas holidays all the time. My mom would take my sis and I, my older sister and I, on the streetcar down to downtown LA from where we lived, which was probably 10 or 12 miles from downtown LA. And at downtown LA in the 50s, thereabouts, there were department stores. And the department stores had these huge display windows. And those huge display windows at probably 4 or 5 large department stores were decorated and made up to the nines around a Christmas theme, including the trains that went through the tunnels. And it was just an incredible memory that stuck in my head. That was Christmas for me, and not the day itself, but the experience of the Christmas season was there. There were crosses, it was all there. There was Santa Claus sitting, and it was all animated. It wasn't people. This was all animation. It was fabulous things. That's the memory. I knew it was Christmas when we got on the train, the streetcar, and went downtown. And we walked around and it was just something to look forward to, something that brought us into the Christmas spirit. So.
Well, just one last quick little story about Teresa and Larry Gaffney. Larry being Santa Claus here. It was in the middle of the year. We used to have a family here that had a son who was developmentally challenged, and he saw Larry coming in. Larry was famous for wearing shorts. It was either the Santa Claus suit or shorts. and he's in his shorts. And that particular day, or something like, I guess Larry was in a festive mood, so he was in a Hawaiian shirt. And this little boy comes running up to him and is like, Santa Claus, I want to talk to you about Christmas. And like that, Larry turned around and was like, he was Santa Claus. Just like that, because he heard it. And it was amazing. And that happened more than once, but I remember him that one particular time.
I think it's a really cool thing that you have that history here at Morning Star, and that Wes Boots was willing to take on that persona. You know, he grows the beard, you know, and my kids know him as Santa. It's a really cool thing that it's spanning generations. That might not have been foreseen, you know, and it's a really cool thing. So, thank you all, not just for today, but for being our core parables group. Some of our people are in Albuquerque right now because something happened yesterday. You know, it was a big game. And so we're missing some of our friends, but we've been doing this for a little over a year now, and it is making a difference in our community. It's so great to get to know all of you better. And we are working on the lineup for January. We will not meet next week because of the hours that we have. Our Christmas Eve service, 10:15 and 4 p.m. But we'll have lots of goodies and lots of time to visit. But Parables will be held on the 31st.
So on the 31st, barring any unforeseen circumstances, I've been left to be in charge. We will have parables, but I want to juice it now. Spike it right now. We're going to talk about our new year. What we want into the new year.
What our intentions are.
What our intentions are. What our goals, our resolutions are. But also, like, what is it that we want in the new year? Cool. And so, if you can start thinking about that and bring that.
Very good. And then I'm working on the schedule of different people to interview beginning in January. So thank you all. Thank you. Church will start in about 11 minutes.